right, another totally rewarding chats. Here we are. It's getting interesting. It's getting dark these days early. I had to actually turn the lights on in here. How's it going, Paul?
I have the light to the point where I'm just realizing you could see it like a beam me up. The aliens are coming to get me.
So you can see, not poor Warren's going to sit at the side. When we built our house, you see the light that's above my head? I had to disable because I'm so OCD. I had to make the room completely, everything had to be square and perfect, and my window in the middle and my desk in the middle and everything else. But then the light was above my head. And I had to, there's no reason I should have a halo. So I, had to get rid of that.
I'm thinking more aliens in Pizza Planet from Toy Story.
Pizza Planet. Yeah. The Claw. The Claw is coming. And Warren, welcome to our professional show.
Thank you.
Totally rewarding chats. How's it going?
I am doing great, and I just need to zoom out from my thing here. When I built this office, you can see there are 4 light switches behind me because I put all 4 of my can lights on independent light switches so I could balance the views just like you guys are talking about. So I think we're all in good, illuminating company.
Not really. It sounds like 2 of us were morons and 1 thought ahead.
Right.
That's actually let me just be clear. That's
Sean's answer was to unscrew a light bulb. My answer is to leave it on and make fun of myself. You actually solved the problem, which is you can control the lights.
Yeah.
I did, it does answer the question, how many developers does it take to unscrew a light bulb? We won't talk about how many it took to put it in. We'll go from there. So, Warren, thanks for showing up.
Thanks for having me.
You're regretting it already.
Yeah. So give us your illustrious background, if you will, and bio in your own words, since obviously we can't even talk about lights, so that you can do it justice.
Well, so hi. I like to say this whenever I'm meeting new people. I say, hi, I'm Warren. I'm from Chicagoland, and at least I live here now. Born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, home of the 11-time world champion St. Louis Cardinals, for your listening audience. And then started out really my HR career. I was at a company called Hewitt, which used to be, now is Aon. I started out being a call center representative at the HR outsourcing. So those people that you call in the benefits center and say, I want to take a loan for my 401k. And I had to say, I'm legally required to tell you that's a bad idea, and I had to do the script and kind of follow the prompts and say, well, will you cover my appendectomy? All those sorts of things. And so I got to work the phones and be on there. And back then, Hewitt made the deal with me. They said, we'll pay for your master's degree if it's in HR. And I said, you know what? Sold. I'm going to get married to HR for the rest of my life at this point in time. And so then going around, got the master's, and I still was kind of, HR curious. So I still applied for every job that, back in the day, you go on monster.com and you apply for business analyst, financial analyst, operations analyst, compensation analyst, benefits analyst, and compensation analyst was the only one that called me back.
And so yet another chapter in the comp found you. You didn't find comp.
Nobody chooses comp.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, great. And I worked with the division of SC Johnson, a family company up in Racine, Wisconsin. And
you can still do the commercial.
Yeah.
That's the best part. The family company has to be there.
Did that for years and really enjoyed it. Learned kind of my comp chops there under some great people there, and then eventually moved on to the city, which we call Chicago. Worked at Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, and now FTI Consulting, mostly being an internal comp guy. So I came on your show here to kind of be the voice of the practitioner, right? And say, well, what are all these people who actually work in comp department doing as all these other people try to solve our problems for us, build technology for us, or sell consulting services or products or salary surveys to us? What's it like on the receiving end to actually work in a comp department these days? So that's me in a nutshell.
It's you.
Well, we can start the speed round question with, maybe who's the best ever president of the CCA, the Chicago
Wow, you are going for the jugular in the first question,
it wasn't on my list, but you didn't mention that you're the current Grand Poobah, and so I'm curious, who was the best one?
I don't know if I have an answer. I've been a member of the Milwaukee Area Compensation Association or the Chicago Comp Association for 20 years when you add them all together. And at a two-year rotation, it's unfair to pick. But I will pick, and I'll say that my direct predecessor, Shelley Wurgis, was a fantastic person who helped guide that organization. out of COVID, back to in-person meetings, the loss of like World at Work, like in-person classes. Right now they're doing a lot of virtual classes, which we still get some revenue from, but not a lot. So she really had to navigate us through some rapids to try to figure out how to not close the Chicago Compensation Association. And she did it great. And we are not closed to this day. And so, and we even made, as a nonprofit, you always kind of want to hit black, right? And stop hitting red. And we even got there over the last couple of years. So I gotta give it to her. Bringing out of the COVID when in person suddenly meant a whole bunch of different things than it did 10 years ago.
That was
anything other than Paul Ryman was acceptable.
Well, yeah, like that was the perfect political, non-political answer. Meaning, like you found a way to not choose yourself over me, and make it about somebody who probably is better than both of us anyway. But not political.
My tenure here, because we've got decent momentum, all I want to do is keep the wheel that's turning, keep on turning. So, after you get your kids' playground spinny thing going for a bit, you just have to keep it going. That's my job at this point.
It's a great group. It is. I really enjoy when I go, and like Paul and I, I enjoyed the thing in August where, such a good group where you can do kind of fun events where you had the member appreciation and we could just have fun. Although some of those stupid questions that Paul asked about, benefits compliance and legislation dates, that was less fun.
In which year?
Yeah. And Paul, for some reason, wouldn't take who cares as an answer, which was unfortunate. Speed round. Before we get into the fun stuff, are you a coffee or tea person?
I am a tea person. I drink what this man named Patrick Stewart referenced to me. He drinks Yorkshire Gold, as he says in his book, Making It So. And so I am a Yorkshire Gold tea guy following Patrick Stewart, who doesn't drink Earl Grey, by the way, because I know you all are Star Trek fans, and especially the listening audience. And he doesn't drink Earl Grey. He drinks Yorkshire Gold. So I found that interesting, and I've modeled my tea habits after him.
And may that be a Jeopardy question in the near future before I forget it.
Yeah, holy smokes. Like, who knew that Patrick Stewart had such tea preferences?
Yeah, may I use that somewhere that comes up? Are you compa ratio or range penetration?
I like range penetration more because I think that if you derive a salary structure, you derove it for a reason, right? And it has a minimum and maximum for a reason, and it isn't all about the midpoint, right? And so I think that, I think I'm come over to the range penetration side of things because comp ratio, you can put ranges around comp ratios to 80 to 120, but I like kind of monkeying with stuff as well and kind of handcrafting some things, and that means I want the minimum to be exactly here and the maximum to be exactly here, and I want you to be in that range. That is sometimes deeper than just 80 to 120 on a comp ratio account. That's me.
You have a weekend away now, Warren. And would you rather spend it at a posh resort or out in the woods roughing it?
I would spend it in the woods. We've got a cabin near Galena, Illinois, which is a cute little vacation town, and it is on the banks of the Mississippi River. And so if you gave me a choice, give me a screened-in porch, cable TV, air conditioning, and the woods, So give me all those things together.
I hung my head knowing I was losing because, Warren, this is like an ongoing thing. I'm Mr. Posh and Sean is Mr. Not. But I'm like, oh, God, Warren's got that cabin. I can see where this is going. But then I'm like, wait a minute. That is like camping light. Like that is you're taking the posh and putting it in the woods.
Yeah.
Because you've got the
So I would put that in the 85% campa ratio. Campa to posh ratio. That's kind of where it is because I think we've had some of those, Paul. We do need a camp. Maybe that's what we got to start, a campa ratio.
The campa ratio
for this because there is this line of like, all the way to super posh to like no, and then you're right. There's like totally give me a sheet of Visqueen and a knife and one match and go out for the weekend.
And that's my wife. Like, I'm an Eagle Scout, and so there was a lot of camping in my past. And now my wife and daughter, you could give them specifically a teardrop camper and like a flint rock, and they would have a great time all weekend long. And I'm the one who's like, no, give me the air conditioning at this point.
Well, I won't lie. Now Paul's gonna catch me later for this, but my teardrop has an air conditioner for when I go to the south. I was gonna ask, well, your favorite baseball team is. You kind of got it called out, so you're a big Cardinals fan,
You
right?
bet. Born and raised. You can even see the graphic, I think, a little further over there.
I don't,
the evolution of the
as someone who
logos.
grew up in Chicago as a Cubs fan, I'm still going to continue the rest of this episode, despite the Cardinals thing.
I mean, I lived in Wisconsin for 13 years. I am also a Bears fan. I am also a Packers fan. And honestly, the best answer I have is I want the Cardinals and the Cubs to play each other in the NLCS every year, and then may the best team move on to the World Series every year. You know, and that would be me winning, especially if we can keep the heat and maybe the TV coverage off just the coastal teams. That would be great as a Midwest.
Well, I married into the Boston thing, so my goal would be those two teams play the Red Sox.
You know, everybody was rooting for those 2004 Boston Red Sox to break their streak, and it's a magical year. You remember who they were playing? They were playing the St. Louis Cardinals, by the way, and I felt like we should have really gotten World Series.
No, I mean, I don't want to show you some of the highlight stuff from the, you know, I could show it, spin it
But
around.
I'm going to show you that.
And then the last important question, are you a crunchy or creamy peanut butter person?
Yeah, I saw this one on a prior podcast, so I'm ready for it.
I didn't know it required preparation.
I know. I wanted to see what these lightning round questions were. So here's the thing. I'm going to probably, like, there's a difference between a Diet Pepsi and a regular Pepsi, and I'm choosing regular Pepsi for as many years as I've got left. And if you give me the choice on peanut butter, I'm choosing Jif full fat, blue top, crunchy peanut butter for as many years as I've got left. I will go to the gym, I will eat salads and bananas, but I'm not giving up my full-blooded Pepsi, my full-blooded Budweiser, and Jif crunchy peanut butter.
After a spot of afternoon gold tea.
That's right.
So that's all great. And actually what's really interesting is as we think about talking about your journey through, but also since you've been around the Chicago Comp Association and talked to a lot of professionals, your thoughtfulness on the answers is one of the reasons you think about why I wanted to talk to you about pay equity and transparency and your thoughts on how people start the process and how your process went, let you kind of pontificate that. Your thoughtfulness is like interesting to me on even these questions. How did you start the journey? Because I cannot imagine you started a journey. Like, you know what I'm going to do? You know, it's Friday, and you know what I'm going to do on Monday? I'm going to start pay equity and transparency. So for me, it was really interesting knowing you. How did you start the journey and kind of start the process?
I'm fortunate to have worked at places that have been companies for a really long time. And so whenever I've joined them, whether that was Accenture or KPMG or FTI Consulting, they were in a spot on that journey. And I didn't come into an organization that says, pay equity, we've never run one of those. Pay transparency, we didn't know those laws existed, right? And so I tend to be that relay guy to say, oh, got it. Okay, you did Colorado, or you've started to do annual reviews, or you know you've got some person on your team who's good at stats, and so you're running this and you're reporting it out internally with leadership and things like that. How can we scale it, right? How can we make sure that we're evolving to the next set of regulations, whether that is New York City, which came out 2022, whether that's the European Union that's coming out, or on the pay equity side. You know, there was this whole idea for publicly traded companies, especially with Arjuna Capital, that they were going to set the bar. The activist stakeholders were going to set the bar, and we all were going to have to go do whatever Arjuna Capital tells us to go do, because they were making demands of some of these other firms that they were stakeholders in. I've been kind of I wouldn't say I'm starting. I'd say I help companies, help the places I go, try to go from good to great. Sometimes we just go from good to more good, good to gooder, as it is. But like, we're not sitting out there being Starbucks saying, hey, we're the first ones through this brick wall. You know, a lot of the market that I see, whether it's the Chicago or the professional services market, is that everybody wants to comply and everybody doesn't want to do more than their peers are doing. You've still got market competitiveness in there. Like, why would we in a competitive market for talent, for clients, for employee expectations, why would we always be the first to go through? And you hear that across various leadership teams as you go. So I'm not really speaking about FTI directly. It's more just like the whole industry is kind of going along as much as they need to come along across the comp world, and you've got few me first type leaders in this space. I think someone long time ago predicted, said that saying that you're really, really good at pay equity is just kind of a lawsuit predictor at a certain point in time. And it's a lawsuit generator because you're going to have some people that say, really? My CEO or my board or my communications department just says we're great at this? Well, how am I compared to someone else? Because at the micro versus the macro, there may be pay differences, and they may be explainable pay differences, but you're going to have to explain yourself at the micro level if you do all these great messages across the macro. So I found that the industry itself is just kind of being compliant. It is learning how to do these things. It's learning how to do these things at scale, whether it's with technology or internally. But we're all on a journey, right? And that's kind of my long answer to your question, Sean. I don't remember what your question was.
There was one. You answered a question.
I mean, it's interesting. So when you talk about the driver to pay equity, it really then, if I summarize this right, the legislative piece, right? Because I do little rainbow, blue skies, unicorns thing. I do think most companies want to be good payers. Maybe not great payers, but I do think they would like to be good payers equitably bad or equitably good. But it's interesting, to summarize, you're basically saying they're following the legislative. That's the driver for them mostly.
I mean, there's a couple of ways you can make this case, right? The first is you got to be compliant with the law. And the lawyers love it when you try to be compliant with the law and not try to skate it, right? So that's kind of the bar that everybody universally has to follow. And that's what Europe is getting ready for, even as they haven't really published really definitive expectations yet. June is still coming. We're all still trying to get ready for it, even in a world of uncertainty. There's that bar. Then there's this bar of like Gen Z and social media and Instagram and TikTok and employee expectations. They all kind of roll into this big bucket for me of employee expectations. I've found that employee expectations doesn't really change the leadership mind all that much when you're sitting at like the leadership table. Well, the employees want it. Well, that usually isn't enough to make the leaders, do it just because the employees want it. They all want red convertibles too, especially down south. So there's that. I think the employee expectations bucket is something that is an added factor, but it is not clearly as driving the work as much as the legislation is. And then you've got this third, which is these are our values, right? And our values mean we want to be the leaders in this space. Unfortunately, we're starting to live in an environment over the last couple of years where a lot of companies have pulled back on that DEI values piece to recognize the current environment. And so does your values argument push you forward? Does your employee expectations argument push you forward? Or does the legislation push you forward? And that's the common bar that the whole market is going to have to react to. And that's where you can kind of keep pace with your competitors as well.
Yeah. I think I see, too, the demographic pressure. You framed it as a Gen Z thing, too. But I do think you're right that certain industries sort of just think about this differently than others, whether it's the gender makeup of the workforce, whether it's the racial makeup of the workforce, maybe it's the profession mix, right? Like you go to talk to a bunch of restaurants, they think about pay equity super differently than, engineering firms or software companies. So I think there's the level of external pressure has changed a lot in different spaces. And I think you raise an interesting point that professional services is a little bit of a herd mentality, right? Like, because the talent market is so competitive between a relatively small number of companies that as a result, you never want to go too far ahead because you might go too far. So there's this natural sluggishness of change to some extent in certain markets. And I'm not characterizing that for everything in services, but in this area, it kind of is, because to be a leader might not get you what you want, and it might hurt you a lot because you're really competing with a dozen companies. Like, that's kind of it.
Well, it's interesting because pay equity and pay transparency, obviously two different things and two different legal standards. But my perspective, I think pay transparency is driving pay equity, right? That, because it's public. To your point, I think like the employee expectations, this stuff, and now they get to see stuff. You kind of have to take care of business in the back because of the pay transparency laws. And maybe the pay equity, this will sound maybe not great, but, the pay equity piece is kind of like, okay, that's the bar that's set for us. They probably would have had to meet a minimum bar before, but hey, if you're legally going to set it for me, thanks. We can say we meet it.
Well, and I think that's the theory, Sean, right? Like the pay transparency regulation is a tool to drive pay equity, right? And I think many would challenge whether it would work. And I think what you're premise there is maybe it is. It's not direct, right? But it's indirectly
Yeah.
working because when you have to be more open, you want to make sure you're not embarrassed by what you show.
And that segues us into what our friend Nancy coined, at least to me, she coined it, is that pay explainability word, right? Where now we're getting into, now that you've got transparency, like transparency is not the whole picture, because the second you're transparent, now you have to explain. And which means you have to have toolkits for explanations and training for explanations, and your comp philosophy has to be well documented, and you have to be able to explain. Because oftentimes, if people go to their boss and say, why do I make what I make? Why do they make what they make? Usually the boss has an answer to that question at a really micro level. But how do we scale that so that global or even nationwide employers can really control that messaging so that it isn't in the hands of line managers, right, coming up with what is probably very plausible and accurate and local explanations, but maybe disconnected from what the organization is doing around pay transparency or pay equity on the broader scale. So that you've got that pay explainability, which is right after, okay, we've published it, we're transparent, great. Why? Right? And it comes right by the time you're done saying the sentence. People are asking you, why is this number like that? Why is this number like that? Which gets you right into the change management, the training, the pay explainability.
So for me, that kind of segues into, you can talk a little bit about FTI if you want, because I know they get 70-ish countries.
We're in 33, I'd say, 33.
Soon to be 70 when they double in size. I'm here to promote it.
Or when countries cut in half.
Yeah, whatever. I said counties. Did I say countries or counties? You're in that many spaces and have that many offices, because I agree with you, Warren. It's like that manager says it, but in a professional services environment in particular, you work with peers that work for different managers in different places, and now, the explanations are different. I mean, how have you seen, from a global standpoint and big company, what are the bigger issues you've had to consider as you've rolled this out, and how have you tackled those? And, if you've seen others do it too.
Yeah. I think about when you go to the webinars, you go to the meetings, it always has a connotation when I say, oh yeah, I'm going to a meeting. When you go to the Chicago Comp Association meetings or the World at Work conference or whatever, you're going to hear a similar theme. And we've actually been hearing it for like 25 years. Does anybody remember T8, the World at Work class, T8 or C8, Total Rewards Communications, right? Yeah. And how to communicate pay? That should have been T1. That should have been C1, because that's really what is coming front and center in all this is your manager enablement, your HR enablement. It's guys like Sean and I can go design all the pay programs you want in the ivory tower, but how does it go and get out to the organization? And it is, your typical communications roadmap. It's your stakeholder analysis. It's your some people call it personas. I call it an empathy analysis, right? Where you've got leadership view, you've got HR leadership, you've got the general HR community, then you've got business leadership, the management committee or the board, and then you've got what I found that you could actually do great on 7 of 9. Star Trek reference. 7 of 9 stakeholders there, and what most firms still miss is those last 2 stakeholders, which are your line managers and your general employee population. Because when you're talking about things like pay practices and pay policies, the leadership will get it, the business leadership will get it, the HR community will get it, the HR leadership will get it, the comp team will get it. But guess what? You missed those last 2 buckets, which are your line managers and your employees. And I think that's a challenge 25 years ago when it was explaining our merit matrix or our bonus programs or the sales comp programs that we all cooked up. And it's the same thing that comes back when we talk about pay transparency, to say, well, why is pay different? And why are we publishing that number in that way? And who's included in the peer group that you published when in my right to information response that is going to be coming out in Europe? And, oh, well, it's all the managers in Spain. Okay, well, who are all the managers in Spain, right? And all these things. So I feel like the way to get it going is through that change management / communications roadmap. And you can't forget about the last 2 groups. You have to find some way to cascade this information out, because I found that across my career, cascade doesn't really work. Because a lot of times the leaders hear the message that they hear, they think that they've heard it, and then they don't really it out to their team unless someone in our role, the practitioner role, the HR role, kind of makes them push it out to their team.
Yeah.
And we find the employee appropriate messaging, we find the line manager appropriate messaging. I feel like a lot of companies still fall down on those last two boxes, and that's hard. Especially
since I think in the cascade, it kind of ignores the fact that the messaging actually needs to be different, right? Like I love the frame, the empathy analysis, because you started this, like this macro versus micro thing, right? For a leader, they might want to understand the macro and the business context and how you as a comp nerd came up with the decision. Most employees do not care about all of that. What they want to know is, why is my increase likely to be 2% instead of 4% this year? That's plain English. Like, that is a few $100s a month that I won't have, and I want to know why. Like, that's a very different conversation and a very different message. So the cascade, we tend to, like, business wash the story and, like, make up all these words. And yeah, I think you're right. Like, you got to think about that employee. Who are they? What do they actually care about? And are you spinning to them? Or are you being honest in real world words about what this really means?
It's really interesting, Paul, because the term persona, Warren, so from being a product monkey, I guess, for a long time,
it's a technical term.
Dev, persona is the term, right, that we use to communicate to marketing and everything else. And so that persona, when you build a product out and build feature sets out, you literally are building a persona matrix, and the messaging and the features and the stuff they care about, Paul, and then the things they understand, right? And so what do they understand? What do they need? And at some level, Paul, I would liken it to the feature set that you deliver to the employee doesn't include all this other stuff. And then jokingly, I've talked about the marketing department, Warren, and you can use AI too, but are you involving your marketing department? And usually for two reasons. One, it's they're good at culling a message that's highly complex down into something that people can read in 15 or 20 seconds. Yeah. And then secondly, the joking part is if they can understand it, anyone can in your company. And so it has to be in English for them to understand it. And so it creates this interesting spot for you to go talk to somebody who's not in comp, has no idea. The interesting thing about marketing, for those that are around, as much as I just beat up on them, they're highly analytical in their roles now. They were like way ahead of everybody else. So they get this, how do I turn numbers into a communication vehicle thing? And so there's some opportunity, Warren. I think that is, to your point, where it was T9 or T8 before. Yeah. It is the new role of comp. Like, you have to be in the comms business at some level.
Well, it's the added role, right? Because guess what? I mean, we can have a whole nother one of these on the evolution of the comp profession, as I'm sure we've talked about. But, there's a part of me that always says, I often say, do whatever you did last year plus 30%. That's your new job as a comp professional, right? And then it just, because did we stop doing salary surveys? Did we stop doing market analysis? Did we stop doing annual comp planning? No, we still do all that. And we do communications, and we do pay transparency, and we're trying to figure out how AI can impact and disrupt our lives within the department without sacrificing the quality standards and fiduciary standards that we're often held to, right? And so, that's whatever you did last year. The other thing about communications, I like your bridge there, because they're the first, that marketing team is the first acid test on, is anyone going to read this and understand it? And they can kind of be that filter. It's an incentive design quote that I use, but I say, if your program doesn't tell someone what to do on Monday morning at 8 a.m., every Monday morning at 8 a.m., then you don't have a very good program. You have to be actionable insights. Otherwise, people are going to think, it's money from the sky, and I get it at the end of the year, and I'll try as best as I can to hit whatever metrics I've got. But, you put 17 metrics on someone, they don't know what to do on Monday at 8 a.m. because they don't know which of those metrics to hit. And it's the same idea as our communications. We have to be able to digest our pay philosophy down to something that people can say, yeah, that seems about right. That seems fair. That seems explainable. That seems motivating. It's those, your bread and butter comp philosophy slide. Oh, that seems market competitive. There's all four, right? Fair, explainable, market competitive. and motivating.
So if you had 2 or 3 things you made sure people do, I'll say 2 because one is communication. So I'll give you the first one because I'm guessing it's comms. But what are the other key items you've seen in successful programs, especially at scale?
It's not that I came on here to sell software as a service or software as a solution companies, but I would say you got to get help these days. Because just trying to rely on newsletters that kind of tell you from law firms about upcoming legislation isn't going to close the gaps anymore. I recommend getting help. Now, whether that's an expert who knows this stuff really well in your own legal department, whether you've got someone really passionate about these topics on your own comp team, in which you can say, great, you are now the czar of this topic and you have to your responsibility is staying abreast on all the industry news that comes out. Or you pay for someone to help you with the analytics, help you with staying on top of the law so that you can ask a question of them and say, which provinces in Canada do we have to again? And then they actually give you an answer that doesn't make you Google for, 85 minutes. And then you kind
I didn't know that was a province in Canada.
Yeah, you kind of get a half answer. Are you ready? Are we in a place now where we're supposed to give half answers from Google to our board? Like, no, we're not. We're supposed to give real answers to real questions. And sometimes you call in the experts to help. So I would say, number one, get help because it's going to be really hard to stay on top of all this legislation and the requirements it requires without help translating it into what it is. And they often have this great perspective of like, okay, yeah, I understand that the legislation says that, and your legal team is going to help us say that. But the way a lot of the firms are interpreting that legislation, it sounds like muh. And until case law comes down and says everybody's wrong, everybody interpreted that incorrectly, again, back to the competitive point, you interpret the legislation with your own legal team and with your help and with yourselves to say what's the right choice for my firm. Because all this stuff is not always prescriptively clear. It isn't always by grade. Some firms don't have grades. Some firms have 90 grades. It can't be. You're going to have help customizing it to how it works for your org. So number one is get help. And number two is don't sleep on the communications, right? Which is where we talked about it. Because we can put our comp teams, our managers, our analysts so far in the data, making sure that we're complying and pulling all our data and stretching it and summarizing it in all these ways. And it's just going to live on their desktop. And maybe we'll get enough to be able to report to the government regulator. But that's not where the legislation is going. The legislation is going, and you have to communicate it to your works councils, and you have to communicate it to your employee representatives, and it's going to be on your public website. And so therefore, people are going to ask you about it. Yeah. So you can't sleep on the communications on it. You got to engage your leadership so that they understand what's going on in their country. Because that leadership, that business leadership, they're going to be the first line of defense for those questions that come in. And you kind of want to arm them with the talking points so that they don't say, I don't know, that's an HR thing.
Yeah, I think I've been talking about the proactive, you have the proactive, but then being proactive with your reactive. Because there's these things where now, someone can call and say, or request, that show me where I am and where the average man and every woman is. And so instead of just reacting when that happens, where you're proactive and putting that process in place and really thinking through all the use cases, to use more product lingo, I guess, of how they're going to interact with you. And so that communication is ready and consistent, because if you leave it to the HRBP in, one part of Spain and then another part of Spain, and then they're going, the fact that they think they're not going to talk to each other in other parts of the company or share data, it's just going to happen. And so I think that's really important when you talk about, Warren, getting your whole comm strategy and really thinking through all the personas, what you have to give them and what they might ask for, so that you have that all prepped.
As best as you can. And then there's reality, right? In which, as I'm sitting here saying, am I a superstar? Are we going to do this the best ever? Hey, we're going to do it as good as we can with the capacity we've got, with the resources we have. And, and we're going to try to achieve the world, right? That's always our goal. And then reality hits, and then you say, okay, we're going to do it like this instead. And then you stay adaptive, and you go down from there, So it's both. Give yourself, I guess my third one, you didn't ask for 3, you asked for 2. Third one is give yourself some grace as we're all trying to figure this out. From a practitioner standpoint of view, I'm a pretty experienced guy. I'm a pretty well-connected guy. I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing when we're trying to figure out how to solve these problems. So if you still feel like you have no idea what you're doing, you're not alone. Like, that's where organizations like World at Work or the Chicago Comp Association or your industry groups, they're not going to tell you what to do for the legalese, nor should they, right? But they can at least let you know that you're not alone trying to figure out how to fit these challenges into your own firm. So give yourself some grace and say, I'm going to get through it. We just got to we're going to eat the whole apple, but we're going to do it one bite at a time.
Yeah.
You know?
And I always, advice I give new comp people in particular is like, good faith goes a long way. And I mean that from you'll notice every law is written with good faith as like a starting basis. Like, they want to know that you want to try to get it right. That does not mean you're going to get it perfect, right? But so it's not just to say, like, Warren's not saying don't worry about it. He's saying it's going to be okay. Like, try to get it right. Do your best. We're all trying to do our best. And if you can demonstrate you're giving it your best, employees will give you credit for that. The law will give you credit for that. And you'll be in the right mental mindset to continually make progress. And you're not going to beat yourself over the fact that didn't do that.
I like the word grace, actually, Warren. And because as I've been out with Nancy, on the fireside chat stuff, since you mentioned Nancy, the term I use a lot for people, I need to add grace, because actually that's a great part, is it's a process, not a project. And so you're not, basically you're not going to get it right when you start. Yeah. Just start with, you're going to fail perfection out of the gate. But long term, it's a process that you need to incorporate. Communication process. It's not a project. Yeah. Data process. It's a project. You're going to get stuff wrong. But I really like, actually, Warren, the EQ side of that, because I'm more the, all the math and the whatever. I think I like the EQ. Give yourself some grace. You're doing the best you can. You're learning. Nobody's been doing this for 10 or 15 years. There isn't a 15-year pay equity legislation expert out there. There's not one.
No.
So we're all learning at the same time. And to your point, there's no legal precedent either. We're all waiting and seeing how this is really going to shake out. And to your point, Paul, like, how far does good faith go? What are the numbers? What do they really lean on? And there's just so much to learn.
Yeah, particularly on the pay transparency side, to be clear, right? Yeah. I do think there is quite a bit of case law on the pay equity side. Equal pay for equal work is not a new thing, but that's different, right? I think that's where there is a right answer.
Yeah.
Don't discriminate, don't do bad things.
Most firms are getting pretty good at that by now, yes. And at least they're on their own definition in a way that they can feel like they and their legal teams can defend it and explain it and say, yeah, these are our compensatory factors, and this is what the math says, and that's why we think we're okay, and kind of tell that story. Now, they might not go and publish all those standard devs out to every employee. That's atypical, right? That's not what firms typically do. But internally, you really should be pretty good at getting your leadership and your management comfortable that we're doing those analysis, because those have been around for 15 plus years.
Yeah, exactly.
Switching it, allowing you to expand your horizons, Warren. If you could solve anything, now that I've been using product terms, I'll use a really professional one. Automagically solve anything in HR, what would it be? Don't say communication.
I'm interested in stance on this, but it's the one that came to mind as you said that it'll be the question. My automagic would be, and some firms already do this, would be to take performance out of base pay. Just take it out of base pay, and then let your market forces, let your business forces just. Why do we need to give, like, performance is promotion and performance is bonus? Like, can't we use the levers of promotion and bonus to reward the highest and higher performers across our organization? And then just have this kind of, the job pays what the job pays. And if you do great at the job, you're going to get... Now, I'm talking about, like, maybe an industry that I've lived in for the last 15 years, which is that services industry. It's that white collar. It's that the jobs are over, 60, 70 grand, and people are generally crunching into laptops. There's a lot of different industry answers to that. I'm speaking it from my perspective, but I think that there is, to me, some merit, as they would say conservatively, in taking performance out of base. Paul laughed for the second I said, what do you think?
Season 2, episode 5 of this very podcast. And I think you said something super important as part of the tail end of your response there, which is there might be an industry effect here, right? So I grew up as a consultant, right? I was one of those people that you essentially managed pay for, and I will tell you, salary was basically irrelevant in the performance conversation. It was all about bonus and advancement. Like, that's how performance was rewarded. Whether you got a 3% raise, a 5% raise, an 8% raise, kind of irrelevant. You were shooting for the 20% raise and the big bonus, right? Like, so I think there is some element of that in services where everybody's bonus eligible that works. I think if you go back and listen to the debate on episode 5, like, bonus isn't practical in some circumstances. Like, there's some natural limits to the scalability of that outside of services. And you have to solve for what's the manager message, right? So as long as the manager has some way of saying, Warren, you had a great year, here's something more than the rest. Right? That you just need that lever somewhere in the toolkit. Right. And salary still matters to a lot of people, especially if there isn't bonus, if there isn't sort of access to other things.
I'm talking about when those options are available. And I'm not opposed to like mini grades either, right? So I get how the salary surveys themselves do this. M1, M2, M3, they're all M's, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we do have an M1, an M2, and an M3 so that someone can go from $120 to $145 to $160. That's still a promotion realm around the fact, besides giving one comp manager a 6% raise and another comp manager a 6.5% raise. Those are actually harder to explain and defend than other things. You know?
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's where, and I enjoyed debating Turetsky on another episode, in part because I just like to argue with people, as my wife would say. But and this comes to, I mean, I run a firm with fixed rates of pay per title. Like, we don't differentiate for this very reason. Like, no, like, work hard, be great, and you'll earn more through promotion, not through a great merit increase. Because I just think we get too micro-focused on these little differences that don't make as much of a difference as you think.
For me, like I said, go back and listen, because I think this is like multiple episodes, and actually not a plug for that. I don't know if there is one. We should have put this in for World at Work next year. Like, I think it's such a big thing, because you do have, for me, there's always issues like, how do you deal with, if the business isn't growing, Paul, and you've got a certain rate for pay, and now do I lose my best talent because the not as good talent won't leave? And if you're flat, you're not growing, there's nowhere for them to go unless someone leaves, dies, and retire. So it gets complex fast. Okay. And so, which is why this is a great discussion. Same thing with hourly rates. They don't know, they don't know, right? There's no bonus eligibility. So I think actually the thing I take away, Warren, from that really is I hate these words because then I sound like a consultant, but it depends.
You do sound like a consultant. Yeah.
I know. It's the words I hate the most.
My favorite consultant aphorism is, that is not uncommon. That is not uncommon.
That literally communicates zero. Like, what does that mean?
That approach is not uncommon.
We've done a 10-week study, and it depends. And by the way, it depends is not uncommon. Yeah,
that is not uncommon. The double negative.
That's great.
I got to use that more often.
I really appreciate you coming on, Warren. Appreciate you taking the time and sharing the perspective, because I know you guys do have 33 countries. And you also have the unique perspective as the now Grand Poobah of the Chicago Comp Association, and actually, more importantly, been around 20 years in that association and seeing all the different companies as they talk about, different things and being able to aggregate that for us. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much. Had a fun time. I always do with you guys.
Yeah. And then for everyone else, follow us on whatever. Work to find Spotify. I won't say Spotify. What did I say earlier, Paul?
You said Spotify. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Before you guys rat me out, I'm going to do it myself. Follow us on your streaming platform of choice.
There you go.
And we will tag Warren. And as you can tell, Warren is a fountain of knowledge. So whether it's from an affiliate standpoint, etc., or pay equity, transparency, or anything else, Warren's an amazing resource if you want to reach out to him as well. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Warren.
Thanks, everyone.